road to obscurity. Nobody's going to care anymore. It's like you're seeing it take place with late night television. Nobody gives a fuck about it anymore.
I know.
And it's slowly, you have a bad business model and you're not adapting.
Yeah, the creativity's gone for late night comedy, right? Like that's not really a thing anymore.
No,
How can Jimmy Kimmel live with him? Like Jimmy Kimmel is a talented guy, and I don't think he's like an evil person or something, but he's made this deal where he just serves power and attacks anybody who challenges power. Like honestly, how can he look in the mirror and say, I'm doing something honorable? Like, how can he live with himself? How can his wife sleep with him?
Well,
There's not a chance in hell that this is funny or going to work. And when you see those flat, corny, late-night monologue jokes with no audience, Colbert, there's Jimmy Kimmel, there's Fallon. What they're doing is just like reading off of a teleprompter. So a bunch of really good joke writers wrote them some stuff, and then they're playing to the audience, and the audience is like laughing, so they get this feedback, and they know how to do that. They stand there, and there's applause signs. And then there's producers. There's the warm-up guy that's literally telling people to applaud. They're like, okay, explaining to the people, okay, when Jimmy comes out, I want a big round of applause. Let's practice this right now.
And this is why so much of comedy is not funny today. It's my chief criticism of like late night comedy, which I find unwatchable. I think it's totally unwatchable.
But also contemptible. I mean, they're collaborators.
They're just like the fact checkers. They're guardians of the narrative.
In that case, do you think that's him or a writer? Can't you tell?
Jimmy Kimmel?
Yeah.
No, it's him for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, he used to host the Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, for hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke. Funny thing to say. He's had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood.
The true beauty, or perhaps the sheer brutality, of this uncoordinated takedown is that neither Joe Rogan nor Tucker Carlson ever needed to share a stage or even acknowledge each other's existence to achieve their goal. They didn't coordinate a hit job. They just happened to simultaneously shine a very bright, very unflattering flashlight on the same soggy, unimpressive corner of showbiz, where Jimmy Kimmel was apparently busy tap dancing in a rapidly forming puddle of his own perceived ego and declining cultural relevance. Rogan laughed at the sheer absurdity of it all. Tucker dissected the underlying hypocrisy with almost clinical precision. Together, without ever meeting or strategizing, they engineered one of the most glorious, if utterly unintentional, tag team obliterations in recent media memory. What makes it even worse, or perhaps better, depending on your perspective, for Kimmel is how entirely preventable it all seemed. He could have chosen to stay funny. He could have chosen to avoid becoming the very punchline he now delivers. But somewhere along the way, according to these scathing critiques, he traded his comedic charisma for claptrap and genuine comedy for corporate-approved messaging. Now, instead of making people laugh, he often just makes them check the time. And that's the thing. Rogan didn't need to directly insult Kimmel in every sentence. All he had to do was embody everything Kimmel seemingly abandoned: raw authenticity, genuine unpredictability, and the unapologetic courage to offend. Tucker Carlson didn't need to mention Kimmel by name in every segment. He just had to skillfully contrast the hollow performance of mainstream late-night satire with his own brand of explosive, if occasionally deranged, truth-telling. The result? Jimmy Kimmel now looks like the unfunny, out-of-touch middle manager at a particularly depressing office Christmas party, desperately trying to DJ with a broken record. It's a brutal, unflattering, and, for many, an entirely accurate assessment.
It'd be one thing if his job wasn't to be a comedian and to do that, but his job is to be he's supposed to be funny, and comedians are supposed to hold people in positions of power accountable.
But he's a pure suck-up
Yeah,
to the people in charge.
exactly.
He's their Praetorian guard.
Yeah,
And it's like the self-hatred he must feel, because he wasn't always, that's my point. Yeah. I mean, Colbert has always been a hard partisan, talented guy, but obviously he's not a comedian. But Kimmel was a comedian. Like, how does he, I don't understand.
I don't know
how he can sleep.
He might.
In one of his now infamous viral segments, Tucker unloaded a monologue that sliced through the perceived Hollywood hypocrisy like a warm chainsaw through artisanal tofu. Without ever needing to give Kimmel the professional dignity of being directly named as his sole target, Tucker eviscerated the exact type of late-night host who, in his view, masks rank elitism behind a facade of canned laughter and performative empathy. Late-night comedians, Tucker passionately argued, have become little more than human teleprompters, dutifully regurgitating safe, pre-approved content that has been meticulously vetted by studio executives, corporate sponsors, and political focus groups. Again, no specific names were strictly needed when the custom-fit, bespoke shoe fits that tightly. It practically chokes off the blood flow to any remaining comedic sensibility. For Tucker, this wasn't merely about Kimmel's ratings or his comedic relevance. It was about his perceived role as a collaborator. He pointed out with undisguised glee that these so-called rebels of comedy spend more time endorsing pharmaceutical products and pushing approved narratives than they do telling actual challenging jokes. The supposed kings of satire now sound like walking, talking disclaimers. Jimmy Kimmel, once perhaps a somewhat rogue, unpredictable voice in the early days of his comedy career, now performs like he's auditioning for a permanent position at the CDC's birthday party planning committee. Meanwhile, Tucker's own online following exploded, precisely because he offers an unscripted, unfiltered, and utterly unconcerned alternative to the kind of polished approval that Kimmel nightly panders to.
He might buy into the narrative to the extent that he thinks it's morally wrong to joke about these certain topics.
But it's not just that, he's like pouring hot oil on the peasants from the parapet. Like he's hurting anyone who challenges the king. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's upside down. The comedians should be poking holes in the popular narrative, not propping it up.
Jimmy Kimmel is. Like, truly. No, I mean it.
You said it,
no
not me.
amount of money is worth what he's doing, in my opinion.
While Kimmel throws meticulously crafted, pre-approved shade in a designer suit, Rogan just shrugs it off in a hoodie and then laughs all the way to his reported $200 million Spotify deal. The sheer absurdity of the situation practically writes itself. One guy peddles off in challenging, truth-seeking, however messy it might get, conversations, sometimes with a joint in hand. The other delivers pre-vetted punchlines with all the genuine zest of a perpetually bored hotel lobby piano player. And then, from the other side of the ideological spectrum, comes Tucker Carlson, the undisputed king of cable news chaos, now reborn as a social media sniper. If Joe Rogan roasted Jimmy Kimmel with a kind of laid-back, almost philosophical contempt, Tucker Carlson metaphorically lit him on fire with a gleeful grin and then walked away, probably humming patriotic music. Post-Fox News, Tucker has fully embraced his new role as a digital outlaw. No more restrictive FCC regulations. No more nervous executive producers pretending they're actually in control. Just Tucker, a webcam, and an apparent vendetta against every single talking head, still clinging desperately to their saggy card and their carefully scripted narratives.
Even the quote, comedians, they were on propaganda duty too. Watch this.
He's also pushing U.S. intelligence to find evidence for this theory that the virus was accidentally released from a lab in Wuhan. That's his new angle to feed the wingnuts, to treat this virus like it was a conspiracy of some kind.
It should have never happened. This plague should never have happened. It could have been stopped. But people chose not to stop it.
What people? Tomorrow he'll blame the Spanish flu on Antonio Banderas.
Yeah. Imagine if you're a comedian and all of a sudden your cue card has all kinds of talking points from politicians and foreign governments on it. Don't read it. You degrade yourself and you become complicit in the greatest crime in history.
Rogan's disdain for the current state of late night was deliciously vague, yet unmistakably pointed, like a fine wine of passive-aggressive, deeply felt scorn. He mocked the sterile, heavily scripted, and utterly predictable format of these shows, without needing to hold up Jimmy Kimmel's name like a hunting trophy. The kind of raw, uncomfortable, and often hilarious comedy Rogan champions and promotes on his own platform lives in discomfort, in long, meandering tangents, and in guests who frequently say things you're explicitly not supposed to agree with. Kimmel's current version of late-night comedy, in stark contrast, it's safe, predictable sarcasm delivered to a studio audience, seemingly trained like Pavlov's dogs to applaud on cue. If Rogan's podcast is the untamed, often chaotic, Wild West of ideas, Then Kimmel's show, in this scathing framing, is a heavily sanitized, meticulously managed Disney cruise, generously sponsored by flu shots, political correctness, and whatever talking points were approved that morning. The real, brutal jab from Rogan came in the stark, unspoken contrast. Rogan, the man relentlessly vilified by mainstream media for supposedly questioning public health narratives or platforming controversial figures, is reportedly pulling in a staggering 11 million downloads per episode. Kimmel, the network-approved, corporate-backed jester, is allegedly hemorrhaging viewers like a busted oil tanker caught in a shark tank. It's a brutal comparison.
That sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic.
First up, Joe Rogan. This is the man who has painstakingly made a multi-million-dollar career out of asking scientists, comedians, and people who genuinely swear Bigfoot is their next-door neighbor to speak freely, often for 3 highly unpredictable hours straight. On a recent episode of his Colossus of a podcast, reportedly sandwiched somewhere between a deep dive on the therapeutic benefits of DMT and a lengthy explanation of why modern running shoes are systematically ruining our arches, Rogan casually, almost dismissively, torched the entire concept of mainstream late-night comedy. He didn't need to name names explicitly in every breath. He didn't have to. When you describe a profoundly washed-up host who delivers reheated, focus group-tested political zingers, likely written by a committee of increasingly disillusioned interns, and then pretends it's edgy, groundbreaking satire, there's really only one prominent person whose tears are likely hitting the teleprompter.
Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, "Your pronouns are ass and hole." Which is pretty funny. But then...
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that, and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about pronouns.
So Jimmy Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it too.
Yeah. No, he was being accused of joking about it too.
So they were upset at him, even though he was attacking the appropriate person. He was doing it in a manner which is also construed as being transphobic.
The saga, as these critiques paint it, didn't start with an explosive bang. It began with a slow, agonizing whimper. A few too many tired, flat, corny, late-night monologue jokes from Kimmel, likely stitched together by a team of writers who, according to this narrative, clearly stopped trying sometime after Trump initially left office. The once mildly entertaining late-night monologue machine had, in the eyes of Rogan and Carlson, devolved into a predictable 5-minute corporate TED Talk, reliably interrupted by strategically placed, often forced, applause signs. As one commentator in the transcript bluntly put it, there's not a effing chance in hell that this is funny or going to work. When Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson finally and separately turned their formidable attention to this perceived monument of mainstream mediocrity, they didn't need to orchestrate a coordinated takedown. Jimmy Kimmel's brand of smug, safe, and increasingly predictable comedy, they argue, practically dismantled itself. Rogan and Carlson just gleefully brought the firewood and the matches.
The job description of a comedian is not so different from the job description of a journalist, as traditionally constituted. Tell the truth about the powerful. Comedians are usually a lot smarter, more clever, and incisive than journalists, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. Almost none still do. Adam Carolla is one of the very few remaining comedians in the United States.
There's something almost poetically satisfying, or perhaps just grimly fascinating, about watching a mainstream late-night host get served a piping hot dish of cold, hard justice by 2 men who don't even acknowledge each other's professional existence, let alone coordinate their attacks. One is the undisputed former MMA commentator turned podcasting demigod, whose empire is built on elk meat, psychedelic explorations, and a healthy dose of conspiracy theories. The other is the cable news renegade, the man who arguably left a smoking crater where Fox News' primetime lineup once proudly stood, and caught squarely in the middle of their independent, yet thematically aligned crosshairs. Jimmy Kimmel, flailing like a bewildered dad at Coachella, desperately trying to prove to everyone that he still knows what TikTok is, or at least how to read a teleprompter.
They mean nothing.
I agree. Wait until you hear about this guy named Tucker Carlson. You are going to hate him.
The undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources.
Right. The big topics, the important subjects like these.
Well, it turns out leprechauns exist not just on cereal boxes. There are a lot of people who believe they have seen a leprechaun. Now it faces an even more profound threat. Zombie raccoons. Honestly, how much emotional support does a snake provide?
Imagine waking up one morning to find out that Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson, two titans from entirely different, often warring corners of the media universe, have somehow formed an unholy, unspoken alliance with a single, solitary mission: to absolutely vaporize Jimmy Kimmel. No direct warning, no on-air confrontation, just pure, unadulterated verbal carnage delivered from afar. 1 minute, Kimmel is the polished king of late night, cracking his usual jokes. The next, he's the unfortunate main course in a tag team takedown that reportedly left Hollywood utterly speechless. Rogan is allegedly calling out the cringe. Tucker is supposedly grinning like it's Christmas morning. And Jimmy Kimmel? Well, he's probably somewhere backstage, frantically rethinking a whole lot of life choices. This isn't just your average celebrity feud, folks. This is a flaming dumpster fire of brutal truth and absolutely zero mercy. Buckle up, because it gets gloriously, uncomfortably messy.